Welcome to this WiseL tutorial on SQL Server Reporting Services 2016. In this video we're going to compare Report Builder with SQL Server Data Tools, which are two separate bits of software that Microsoft have released which allow you to create reporting services reports. So this video is designed basically to compare the two products so that you can make the best choice about which one to use. We're going to start with a quick overview of the two products so you know what they're roughly designed to do and there's some of the similarities between them, before we move on to essentially taking you through building an entire report from scratch in both bits of software so you can see where the main differences are. So we'll start with installing the software, then creating a new report, creating data sources and data sets to connect to your databases and return data, then look at how you work with report items in the two applications. One of the big differences for me is the way you go about writing expressions. The expression builder is somewhat different between the two tools. Then we'll look at how you save, open and import files. One of the nice things about the two products is that they can use files created in either one interchangeably. Then finally we'll look at how you deploy and then view the deployed reports and then download those reports again so that you can make changes to them. So quite a lot to do here. Let's get started. Now, just before we start talking about the differences between Report Builder and Report Server projects, it is worthwhile noting that the ultimate aim of both products is to allow you to create report files with this .rdl extension. Now, although the exact way you go about doing that is slightly different in the two different products, the target audiences are slightly different, the ultimate end result is exactly the same. You can create these RDL files which you can then upload to a report server so that anybody with access to that server can view the reports. There's absolutely no difference in the type of file you create. In fact, a file created in Report Builder can be opened up in a report server project and vice versa. The exact way you design them is subtly different, as well, that's what this video is all about, of course, but in practice, there aren't a huge amount of differences. Here's a basic report design in a Visual Studio project, a report server project. And if I preview the report, it shows me a simple tabular list of films from a movies database. And exactly the same report in Report Builder. The designer looks subtly different, but the end result is exactly the same if I were to run the report. And if I were to upload either of these two reports to the report server, the end result for the end user would be exactly the same as well. So here's the report portal viewed through a web browser, Internet Explorer in this case. I'm going to call it the Reportal as I called it in the previous video. And if I browse through into this movies project, I can have a quick look at this simple movie report that's been deployed. And there's absolutely no way to tell at this point whether that report had been created using a report server project or Report Builder. The end result is exactly the same. It's not just about basic tables either. You can create slightly more sophisticated reports using interesting matrix groups and charting data. So there's the design view in reporting services, a report server project. If I have a quick preview of that one, you'll see a grouped table referred to as a matrix and a not particularly attractive chart, but nonetheless it's a charted set of data. And likewise the same report in Report Builder, so there's the same matrix and the same chart. If I run the report, you'll see exactly the same end result. And of course, once again, once it's been deployed to the report server, you can see exactly the same end result. So, understanding the similarities is, I think, just as important as understanding the differences between the two products. What we'll do in this video is take you essentially from start to finish through creating a simple report using both products to show you where the main differences lie. The first step, of course, is to download and install the software, and at this stage Report Builder is definitely the simpler, easier product to use, and that's going to be a bit of a recurring theme throughout the rest of this video actually. So to install Report Builder, you can use your favourite search engine and search for Report Builder 2016. You might as well grab the latest version available, and you should find a quick link to download Microsoft SQL Server 2016 Report Builder. If you click the link, you'll be taken to a page that allows you to download and install it. We've actually already got a video that explains this process in a bit more detail, so I'm not going to go through the entire process right now. We've got a separate video as part of our Report Builder 2016 series, not very fleshed out just yet, but it will be, don't worry. So there's a little video there that explains the details of installing it. It's a pretty small download, it's just about 22 megabytes in size, and the application itself that's installed is pretty small and lightweight. So if you download the application and then run the installer file, you will end up in your start menu with a new folder sitting somewhere in there that stores a quick shortcut to the Report Builder application. And once you've got that installed, you can just click the shortcut to launch it. Now, getting hold of the equivalent software for creating report server projects is a little tiny bit more complex. Even understanding the name of which product you're actually installing can be a bit of a challenge to start with. So what you want to search for if you're going to use Google to find it is something called SQL Server Data Tools. And if you want to make sure you're searching for the 2016 version, so SQL Server 2016 Data Tools or SQL Server Data Tools 2016, either of those will do. So that should take you to a link fairly shortly for downloading SQL Server Data Tools, or SSDT for short. And if I click that link, that will take me away to another page. Now, there are multiple different versions available, and you'll see a lot of information on the page that you've browsed to that will talk about something called Visual Studio as well. So SQL Server Data Tools isn't really a separate application at all, unlike Report Builder. SQL Server Data Tools is really just a set of templates that are used via another application referred to as Visual Studio. So, you can download and install SQL Server Data Tools in a couple of different ways. You could opt to install Visual Studio first, and then install the SQL Server Data Tools templates within Visual Studio. Now that does take up quite a large amount of space on hard drive. A typical base installation for Visual Studio can take, I believe the last time I did it was about 14 gigabytes for the default installation. So significantly more than just the 22 megabyte download for Report Builder. The SQL Server Data Tools adds another couple of hundred megabytes, I believe, on top of that. So it's a slightly more heavyweight application, you might say. Now, you don't necessarily need the full version of Visual Studio. You can just opt to download the SQL Server Data Tools component, and that will install a lightweight version of Visual Studio referred to Visual Studio Shell, I believe. But it doesn't give you the full set of tools available in Visual Studio. Now, all of these products are completely free. You don't need to pay for them. And if you want a bit more detail on exactly how this works, we've of course got a separate video that explains how it works. So part of the SQL Server 2016 Getting Started series, we've got a video here that refers to installing SQL Server Data Tools, which takes you through the entire process in a little bit more detail than I'm intending to go through here. So again, once you've accessed or downloaded and installed SQL Server Data Tools, what you'll then need to do is launch the application referred to as Visual Studio. So from your Start menu, what you can do is search for not Microsoft SQL Server Data Tools, although you might actually find a shortcut for that in your Start menu. What you're looking for instead is a shortcut to Visual Studio. So the way that you use SQL Server Data Tools is by running the Visual Studio application that's been installed. Once you've got the software downloaded and installed, you'll want to get on with creating reports as quickly as possible. And again, with Report Builder, that's a remarkably simple process. All you really need to do is start the application. So if I head back to my Start menu, I've actually created another quick little shortcut for the application here in the main area of my Start menu. So if I choose to launch Report Builder, it's unavoidable creating reports in Report Builder, because as soon as you launch the application, if I just clear this Getting Started panel, it's already created a basic report for me. Now that's nowhere near as simple to do in report server projects or with SQL Server Data Tools. What I have to do first, of course, is I need to launch Visual Studio, and again I've created a quick shortcut for it in this little section here of my Start menu, so that's Launch Visual Studio. It's a much larger application, of course. It takes a little longer to load, but when it has loaded, I can't just create a simple report by itself. In Visual Studio or SQL Server Data Tools, what I have to do is create an entire project to contain my report. So to make that work, I can click the new project link on the left hand side, and again we've got a video as part of the main SQL Server Reporting Services project, that video series which explains how to do this in a lot more detail. And if I've got SQL Server Data Tools installed when I've chosen to create a new project, I'll have this little Business Intelligence category here. No reference to SQL Server Data Tools, somewhat strangely, but SQL Server Data Tools installs this Business Intelligence category in the templates for your Visual Studio projects. So I can choose my report server project, I can choose a location to store it. I should change its name as well, I suppose, to give it a sensible name. Let me call mine, I'm going to call it Movies, and then I'm going to store it on my desktop, and if I click OK, that will then create the report server project, assuming that nothing goes wrong. I still don't actually have a report at this stage, so what I need to do now is create a report in the project. I can do that using the Solution Explorer window, so I can right click the reports folder, and I can either choose to use a wizard to create my new report, which actually makes me create a few items that I don't want to create just yet. So instead I'm going to choose the add option and then choose new item, and then I can choose report from the list, and then I can create a new report. I can change its name if I like. I'll leave it as report 1. When I finally click add, at that point eventually I'll end up with the report in pretty much the same as the one that I've just seen in Report Builder. Now, of course, the main thing that's different between the two applications is the interface itself. Although there are some similarities, there's a huge difference between using Visual Studio and Report Builder. Report Builder has been designed as a basic application, making it as simple as possible just to focus on authoring a report and designing it. So it's designed to look somewhat like a Microsoft Office application, so if you're familiar with things like Excel or Word, etc., then you should be reasonably at home with using the ribbon system, where you can click on the different tabs to view the various different options. There's a file menu which provides you with the standard options for opening and saving files and some extra options. But basically the entire application is focused on just creating the reports and adding objects into it. Visual Studio, on the other hand, is a little bit more complex than that, of course. In Visual Studio you have a huge number of different windows and panels open and available at any one time. So I've got a Solution Explorer window and a Properties window and a Report Data window. I've got a huge section of menus and toolbars, each with huge numbers of different options available in them. The reason this is the case is that Visual Studio isn't just designed to allow you to create reports, of course. It allows you to create any sort of project you can conceive of. It's Microsoft's flagship development application. You can create websites and mobile phone applications and video games and all sorts of different types of projects in here. So we're kind of shoehorning the report design into a much more sophisticated application. Now, despite the fairly big differences in the interface between the two products, the actual steps that you follow to build up a report are pretty much identical. The first step is to create a data source, which is essentially a connection to a database which stores all the data you want to report on. For this example, what we're going to do is connect to a database in SQL Server containing a list of different movies. And if you haven't already got that set up, we have a video series that explains all about how to install SQL Server and how to install the movies database as well as part of that series. So I'm going to assume that you've already completed those steps in case you wanted to follow along with this video. So if you wanted to look for SQL Server 2016 Getting Started, that's the playlist which explains how to go about setting up and installing SQL Server and the movies database. Assuming that you've done that, I'm going to head into Report Builder first of all, and have a look for the Report Data window on the left hand side. If the Report Data window wasn't visible, by the way, you can bring it back by heading to the View tab in the ribbon and then making sure you've checked the Report Data box, and then that will reappear at the left hand side of the screen. To create a data source, I can right click the Data Sources folder and choose Add Data Source, and then I can give my data source a name, so I'm going to call this one Movies. And then I can create a new connection that's embedded in my report. Now, one big difference between Report Builder and Report Server projects is the ability to create something called a shared connection. I can't do that in Report Builder. I'll explain what a shared connection is when we go back to the Report Server project. But for now, all I can do is either refer to an existing shared connection or create a new connection embedded in the report. And I'm going to choose the second option there. I'm going to use SQL Server as my connection type, and I could type in a connection string if I could remember them off the top of my head. So instead I'm going to choose the build option, and that will display a dialog box. I can type in a server name, which in this case is, I'm going to refer to it as ./SQL 2016 training. That's just the name of the instance of SQL Server that I installed in the earlier video that I explained, SQL Server 2016 Getting Started. And then I can select a database that's installed in that instance of SQL Server. So I'm going to go for the movies database. I can then click the OK button to write out the connection string for me, and then click OK to create the data source. Now, doing the same thing in a Report Server project is essentially exactly the same. If I switch back to Visual Studio, where my movies project is sitting, I've got my report data window. I can close this down again, just like I can in Report Builder. To bring it back, it's slightly different. I need to make sure that I've clicked somewhere inside the report design view, and then head to the View menu at the top on the toolbar, and then choose the report data window from there. There's also a keyboard shortcut to bring it back there, Control Alt and D. Anyway, creating a new data source is pretty much the same thing. I can right click Data Sources and choose Add Data Source. And again, I can either refer to a shared data source connection, or I can create a new embedded one. So let's go for the embedded one. The organization of the dialog box is slightly different, but the actual options are pretty much the same. So I'm going to call this one Movies, and then I can click the Edit button this time, rather than Build, to build up my connection string. I can type in my server name, ./SQL 2016, and then I can 2016 training, and then I can select from my drop-down list here the movies database again, click OK, and click OK, and again I've got my data source for my report server report. Now, both of the data sources that we've created so far are referred to as embedded data sources, and all that means is that the data source is saved inside the report that you're working on, and it's only available to that report. Now, in Report Builder, that's the standard way of working, as Report Builder is designed to allow you to work on one single report at a time. You can open up multiple instances of Report Builder, so you could open up Report Builder again and then open up another report and work on them side by side, but they don't talk to each other, they have no sort of a connection between them. In report server projects in SQL Server Data Tools or Visual Studio, that's slightly different. When you work on a report project, you can work on as many different reports as you like. You can carry on adding more and more reports and work on a whole set of reports all in one single project. Now, if I had to carry on building up a connection to my movies database every single time I created a new report, that gets quite tedious. So instead what I can do is create something called a shared data source. I don't do that at the report data level, I do that at the Solution Explorer window. So I can find my shared data sources folder and I can right click into there and choose add new data source. I can then change the name of this data source. I'm going to call this one movies shared just to distinguish it from my other movies data source. Then again I can click the edit button to build up my connection string and type in the same server name /SQL 2016 training. And then if I click on the drop down arrow I can choose my movies database and then click OK and OK again. Now that shared data source is available to any report in the entire project, so no matter how many reports I create I can simply refer to the existing connection rather than going through creating it each time. There's still a little bit of work to do, so in this new report I've just created here, report 2, which I'm currently working on. You can see report 1 and report 2 are open at the same time. I can right click on the data sources folder and choose add data source. I can give it a sensible name, I'm going to call it movies. But this time, rather than building up my connection string again, I can just tell this to refer to a shared data source reference and then select that from the drop down list. So that will provide you with a list of all of the shared data sources in the entire project. So it doesn't save a huge amount of time, but where it would save time is if you ever needed to change anything about that particular connection. If I had 30 different reports in this project and they were all embedded connections or embedded data sources, I'd have 30 different reports to change. If they were all using the shared data source, on the other hand, all I would have to do is double click my movies shared data source and then edit anything that I needed to do in there, and all of the reports would inherit the changes that I made. So that's one big advantage of using report server projects or SQL Server Data Tools. You can create shared data sources while you're working alongside the reports. Once you've created a data source in the report, you can then go about creating something called a data set. So a data source is really just a connection to the database. It doesn't actually return any data. To return some data to report on, you need to create a data set, which is essentially just a saved query in your report. Now again, reporting services projects or Visual Studio SQL Server Data Tools allows you to create both embedded datasets and shared datasets. In Report Builder, you can only create an embedded dataset. You can refer to shared datasets and you can refer to shared data sources, but you can only do that if those shared data sources and datasets have been deployed to the report server. And I haven't done that yet for this particular project, so we'll come back to that a little bit later on in the video. What I'm going to do in this case is, while I'm in Report Builder, I'm going to add a new data set using my movies data source. So I'm going to right click on the movies data source and choose to add a data set using it. I'm going to call my data set something simple like movie data, and then I'm going to create a basic query. Now I can do this in a couple of different ways. I can write out a full SQL Server select statement if I know SQL code very well, Transact SQL. I can write select statements directly into this box. That's a little bit tedious because it's raw text. I don't get any help there whatsoever. If your DBAs have been particularly helpful, they may have created stored procedures for you, which allow you to select from a list. I don't have any stored procedures available here. These are just system stored procedures that don't return anything particularly useful, no movie data at least. So I'm going to go back to the text query, and what I'm going to do here is use the query designer instead. Now this is one fairly big difference between Report Builder and Report Server projects. The query designer tool works very differently. If I view the query designer in Report Builder, what I get is a list of tables on the left hand side which I can expand upon, and then I can simply tick boxes for the columns that I want to put into my report. So let's say if I wanted some information from the certificate table, I'll take the certificate column, and then from the country table I can pick the country column, then from the director table I can choose the full name column, and then the film table I'll choose a variety, I'll choose the title and the release date and a runtime in minutes and the Oscar wins. I think that will do for the film table. And then I'll go for the genre table as well. I can expand the genre table and choose the genre column. Now I'm allowed to pick columns from multiple different tables at this point because the database that I'm connecting to has a bunch of built-in relationship information. It has information about primary keys and foreign keys. Now again, if you don't understand what that means at this point, I've created an entire video that explains how to design and create relational databases, and then a separate video that explains exactly how the YSL movies database is constructed. So that's the one to watch if you want to understand how these tables are related. The neat thing for us is that I happen to know that the relationships are already built in, so I don't have to do anything special here at all, other than tick the boxes for the columns that I want. Now, if that wasn't the case, creating relationships is pretty awkward in Report Builder. If I uncheck the Auto Detect button, what I can then do is have a look at the relationships panel. If I click on the drop down arrow just here at the right hand side, I can see the list of relationships that already exist. So again, the only reason these ones are here is because I've already set these up in the underlying database. If those weren't there, I'd have to create all of these relationships manually, which is a real pain. So if, for instance, I wanted to bring in, let's say I wanted to bring in the studio table as well, I wanted to bring in the studio column. If I choose the studio column, that relationship hasn't actually been created because I've removed the auto detect. So to build it, this is pretty awkward. What I need to do now is I need to add a relationship by clicking the add relationship button. I can choose a table from the left, so that's going to be the film table. I need to do that twice. There's a little bug in that dialog box. It's always happened from every version of Report Builder I've ever used. You have to select the table twice from the list. Once I've chosen the film table, I can then choose the studio table from the list on the right, and that goes in first time. And then it's actually worked out for me happily that Studio ID is connected to Studio ID. Now it just so happens that I named the columns in the film table Studio ID and the studio table Studio ID, so the Query Designer automatically creates a relationship, which is quite handy. If that hadn't been done, what I would have to do subsequently is click the Edit Fields button at the top, and then a separate dialog box will pop up, and that will allow me to select the field from the film table and the field from the studio table, click OK, and then the relationship has been created. So when I finally click OK, that will write out my select statement for me, and I can finally click OK one more time, and my dataset has been created. Creating datasets in a report server project is ever so slightly easier, certainly when it comes to creating relationships if you don't have those set up already. So if I switch back to my movies project, and I'm just going to close down report 2 just for the time being, and I'm going to choose yes to save it, so if I want to go back to it later on I can. Going back to report 1, I've already got my embedded movies data source, so I can right click on it and choose to add a dataset just in the same way as for Report Builder. The dialog box is essentially identical. I'm going to change the name of this so it's called movies data, and then let's have a quick look at building my query. Again, I can write out a query myself by writing out a select statement, or choose a stored procedure, or indeed use the Query Designer. Now the Query Designer is slightly different in report server projects. I think it's slightly easier to use personally because you get a sort of a visual representation of the database diagram as you add tables to it. So rather than just ticking a bunch of boxes to choose the tables, you can click the Add Table button up at the top, and then you can simply double click on the tables you want to use. So let's start with the certificate table and the country table and the director table and the film table and the genre table, and I'm going to put in the studio table as well just for the time being. Then close down that window. You'll see that the diagram, although it's a little bit messy because I've included so many tables, but the diagram has appeared in the background showing you how all the tables are related. So you don't have to worry about that silly little dialog box that Report Builder has trying to understand which tables are related. You can see it visually. Again, this is all reliant on the fact that these relationships are built into the underlying database. But then I can simply check boxes for the particular columns that I want, and I'll try to go with the same if I can remember exactly the same columns I selected from the other dataset. And then I've got all those checked, so that's essentially my data source or my data set built. Now, one of the really beautiful things about this particular Query Designer is if I didn't have a relationship built in, so if I go for the studio table again, let me just select that relationship and then hit the delete key on the keyboard to remove it. So if there were no relationship information built into the underlying database, your tables would not automatically connect columns as they have done for the tables that I've added so far. But creating a temporary join, an ad hoc join between tables, is remarkably simple. All I need to do is click and drag between the related columns. So I go from Studio ID to Studio ID, and it creates an ad hoc join for the purposes of that query. Much simpler. If I finally click OK and then OK one more time, I've got the exact same list of columns as I had for the report builder dataset. OK, so now we've reached the stage where we've retrieved some data from our database. We can get on with the process of displaying it in the report and making it look pretty. And that involves adding report items to the report design canvas. Let's start by doing that in Report Builder. So if I switch back to Report Builder, a couple of different ways you can achieve this in Report Builder. But all the tools you can add, all the report items you can add, are all stored on the Insert tab in the ribbon. So if I head to the Insert tab, there's a variety of different items I can display here. So for things like simple titles, you might want to insert text boxes. Report Builder actually comes along with a couple of basic default text boxes. There's a little footer that tells you when the report was executed by displaying the date and time. And then there's also one that allows you to quickly add a title. Should I want to delete that one, I can drag a selection box around it or just click somewhere inside it to select it and then hit the delete key on the keyboard. And then to insert a new text box, I could just double click the text box tool. That's one technique. If I double click text box, that will be inserted to the top left hand corner. Another technique I could use is I could go back to the Insert tab and I can click once on the text box tool, and then I can click and drag or click once with the mouse to draw one in the report. And a further way to insert a text box is to ignore the Insert tab in the ribbon altogether. I can just right click somewhere in the background of the report and choose Insert and then choose Text Box. Once it's been inserted, it's selected, so I can choose to resize it using the standard sort of techniques for Microsoft drawing tools, and I can type text into it. I'll call this simple movie report. Won't spend too much time doing that. And then I've got a whole bunch of different things I can do to format it. So formatting a text box in Report Builder involves selecting it first. There's a whole bunch of standard formatting tools on the Home tab in the ribbon. I'm sure you'll recognize many of these formatting tools from standard Microsoft products. So there's a fill color tool, and there's a font color tool, and you can make fonts bold and center it, etc., etc. All the standard sorts of things you might expect to be able to do from any standard Microsoft product. To actually display data from the dataset, the type of item that I want to insert is a table. So if I go back to the Insert tab in the ribbon, sadly I can't just use a double click to insert a table in Report Builder, because as soon as I click on the button, I've got a couple of options as a table wizard and an Insert Table tool. The wizard tries to hold you by the hand and helps you out to set up the table, including adding things like grouping levels. I don't care about doing any of that for this particular video. I just want to insert a basic table. So the simplest thing I think to do here is just right click in the report and then choose Insert Table, and then I can choose for each of the columns, I can choose which field I would like to display. So I can choose the title field. I can also click and drag fields from the left hand side into the table, or I can select them from this little field selector button. So let's choose runtime minutes, and then maybe the genre as well, and then maybe just the Oscar wins, just to wrap up. I can change column widths in this sort of standard way. I can format cells in the table in the usual way, so I can select items in the table and head to the Home tab to format them. I can also format things using a couple of other techniques as well. So for instance, if I wanted to format the release date so that it was a nicely formatted date rather than just relying on the default format, I could either right click on that cell in the table and choose to view text box properties, and that will display a separate dialog box with a number tab there. I can then choose date from the list, and then I'm going to go for this one, the fairly standard UK date, day, month, year. If I click OK, that's formatted that text box. I could also use the properties window to format items in the report. So to do that, I would have to view the properties window first. If I head to the view menu and then make sure that I can view the properties window, that will appear at the right hand side of the screen. So for things like runtime minutes, maybe I want to display that with a couple of decimal places. So if I select the runtime minutes column, I can then find the format property in here. This is a slightly more awkward way to apply formatting, but I'll find the format property in there, and I can type in a format. It looks as though I've got a nice simple way to select a format from a drop-down list, but sadly it's not populated with anything useful at this point. So I can just type in a format of 0.00, and then that will format that cell as well. Okay, so you can format things using the Home tab in the ribbon. You can right click on an object and view its properties, or you can view the separate properties panel on the right hand side. Now the basic principle is exactly the same in report server projects. If I switch back to Visual Studio, and if I wanted to insert a text box first of all, well, I haven't got a separate insert tab in the ribbon or an insert menu, but what I do have is this toolbox window sitting here listed at the left hand side of the screen. So if I click on this toolbox tab, that provides me with the same types of items I can add in from the report builder insert tab. So if I wanted to insert a text box, I can just double click text box and that will be inserted into the report, and I can resize it in the same way. I can type text into it in the same way, so I'll call it simple movie report. Formatting it is similar. I've got a basic set of options on the toolbars, so I've got the standard bold font formatting and some background color formatting and text color formatting. I find these slightly difficult to see with the new style menus. There's the fill color and there's the font color. Not particularly obvious, I think you'll agree. The dialog box is also a little bit poorly designed, so if I choose to view the back color, it kind of half chops off the right hand side and I can't resize that dialog box, which is a little bit odd. Anyway, I can set up the background colours in the same way and the font colours in the same way. I can also use the properties window, which is displayed by default. I don't have to choose to enable it. I could also right click on the text box and choose to view its properties in the same sort of way. So if I wanted to go to the font tab, I can then choose colours from the drop down list, and the list is actually sensibly sized this time, so let's go for white and I'll make it bold while I'm here as well. I should also center it in the cell, so we'll go to the alignment tab. I can change the horizontal alignment to centered and then hit OK, and of course I could have done all the same things from the toolbars or from the properties window as well. Inserting a table, I can do that in a couple of ways. Of course, I can go back to the toolbox, I could double click table, or I could click and drag table, or I could just have right clicked into the report and chosen insert table. Same techniques effectively as you've got in Report Builder. Apart from the click and drag one, that's a little bit unusual. So from the toolbox I can click and drag an item from the toolbox directly into the report, which in Report Builder is something you can't do. If I go to the insert tab in the ribbon and try to drag a text box, that doesn't work. So one small tiny minor advantage of using a report server project. Adding fields from the dataset, exactly the same. I can select them from the list like so. I can drag them from the left-hand panel, from the report data panel. I can use a combination of techniques. I'm going to try to go for roughly the same examples that I put into the report builder project as well. On the report builder report, sorry. I can change column widths, I can change formatting, all the same standard things. So at this point, things are pretty similar, which is quite nice. You don't have to worry too much about what's different when it comes to adding items into the report. I should just make sure I've formatted the date in the same way, so I can right click the release date text box and choose text box properties, and it's the same dialog box that you saw in Report Builder. There's a number tab there with a date option, and I'll go with the same date format and hit OK. Again, formatting numbers is the same sort of thing. I can either do that using the dialog box or I can use the properties window again. Let's find the properties window and find the format property, the same one that I just used in Report Builder, and again I'm going to type in a 0.00 for the number format. Okay, so that's the basics of adding items and formatting them. I'm not going to go into any more detail about the more exotic items like charts and matrices and all those other sort of slightly more fancy advanced items. We'll cover those in later videos in the series. This is just to establish that adding items to reports is pretty much the same in both products. Now, one part of report design that is quite different between the two products is when it comes to writing expressions or calculations. One common reason you're likely to do that is when you want to create calculated fields. So just for example, what I'd like to do is create a simple calculation which categorizes our films based on how many Oscars they've won. So if they've won more than 0 Oscars, they're going to be classed as a winner, otherwise they'll be classed as a loser. So it's a bit harsh, but there you go. So what we're going to do is add a calculated field to this dataset, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'd like to show you the expression builder tool. I'm going to start within Visual Studio, so within my report server project. If I right click my movie's dataset and then choose to add a calculated field, I'll get a dialog box which asks me to give my field a name. I'm going to call this one success. And then to launch the expression builder, this crops up in an enormous amount of places in reporting services, but there's a little FX button here. If I click the FX button, that will launch my expression builder tool. Now it doesn't really look like much, but it helps you out with writing complex calculations. Our calculation isn't going to be that complex as it turns out. What we're going to do is use a simple if function. Now I can see a list of common functions, or I could just start writing in my if function if I know the syntax reasonably well. It's actually when you start writing out functions and expressions where the expression builder in Visual Studio is much more usable than the one in Report Builder. This is almost to the point where it's a deal breaker for me using the Report Builder version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type out my if function, and the nice thing about this is as soon as I start typing, I get to the point where I've typed in the if function and then I open up a set of round brackets, I immediately start to get help about how to complete the function. So it lists out a parameter list explaining how many arguments I have to fill in. So I've got 3. There's expression, it tells me what sort of data type it is. There's something called true part, not massively helpful that it's an object, and false part also as an object. It also tells you what type of data or what type of reference the function returns. So an expression, if you're familiar with if functions, this isn't particularly surprising, but expressions are logical tests. So I want to test if the film Oscar wins column is greater than 0. Now, I can insert that using the expression builder, and we'll talk a lot more about this in a later video, but I could just head to the fields list here and simply double click Oscar wins. Alternatively, I can start typing it in, and again, it's when you start typing in expressions where things become incredibly helpful. If I get to the point where I've typed in fields, followed by an exclamation mark, I get a lovely little IntelliSense list that helps me to work out what to do next. So I can choose Oscar wins from the list and then hit the tab key to get that typed in, and then I've got, if I type in a full stop after that, I've got another IntelliSense list which provides me with more options, and specifically here it's the value property that I'm interested in, and I can then check if that is greater than 0. You'll notice I've got this squiggly red underline at this point indicating that I've got a bit of a problem. Well, I just simply haven't finished writing out the calculation yet, of course. So then I can type in a comma, which brings back my tooltip, indicating that in bold that I'm on the next part of the function. So the true part, if that condition returns true, then I can simply enter the answer I want to give, which in this case will be winner. Now you'll notice that literal strings or text entered in double quotes has a subtly different colour in the list. It shows that it's in this sort of darky brown colour to indicate that it's literal text rather than identifiers or actual values like 0, for instance. If I then type in another comma, I can then type in the other answer, which will be loser. And then if I close the round brackets, at that point the squiggly red underline should disappear. And that's a fairly simple calculation. If you have much more complex ones, one of the other nice things about this expression builder is you can break a calculation onto multiple different lines. So a common approach is to put each argument onto a separate line. If I just click just inside the parentheses, the round brackets, and hit the enter key, that throws a new line in the dialog box, and I can hit the tab key to indent that one space, and then again after the first comma I can hit enter to bring the next line down, and then after the next comma. So I can split up the calculation across multiple different lines to see what's happening. The little squiggly underline will come back at various stages if I miss out different symbols, or I put symbols in the wrong place. If I put in a full stop instead of an exclamation mark there, I get squiggly red underlines. So that indicates when I'm doing things incorrectly. So let me just put that back in place again. And when I hit OK and then hit OK again, I've got this new field called success. I'm just going to click and drag this into the table so that it sits at the right hand side of the table. All I'm going to do now is try to achieve exactly the same result in Report Builder. So if I switch back to Report Builder, and then I can right click on my movie dataset and then choose Add Calculated Field. And then again I get the same dialog box at this stage, so I can create a new column called Success, and then I can click the FX button at the right hand side to launch the expression builder. And to begin with, it looks pretty much identical. I get a text box I can type into, I've got little categories to select from, so again I could go to the common functions category. I didn't show this for the expression builder in Visual Studio, but I could have expanded the common functions category and then looked in the program flow category to find my if function. That gives me a couple of little examples, or one example in this case. I could also just double click to insert the if function. But if I try to take the same approach as I took last time, if I try to say equals IIF and then open up some round brackets, you notice at this point I don't get any help whatsoever. Sadly as well, I can't zoom in to make this any clearer. I should have showed you in fact, let me just very quickly switch back to Report or Visual Studio. If I right click on my success field and choose field properties and then click the FX button again, if I hold down the control key and roll the mouse wheel forwards, I can zoom in and roll backwards to zoom out, so I can show you the text that I'm writing. I should have shown you that earlier, apologies. But I can't do that in Report Builder. It's just a basic plain text box and the default font size is quite small. Again, I don't get any help if I start to write out the name of my field. So of course I could go to the fields list and then just double click Oscar wins. But if I were trying to type it out from scratch, I can type in fields, exclamation mark, no help whatsoever. Oscar wins, again, no help whatsoever. Dot value, no help whatsoever. Type in a comma and then open some double quotes and stick in winner, close double quotes, comma, double quotes, loser, and then close the double quotes and close around brackets. There's no indication that these are literal strings with different colours for the text compared to identifiers. There's no help if I miss out a comma or put a punctuation character in the wrong place, no squiggly red underlines, etc., etc. Most annoyingly, if I hit enter, oh, that actually works this time, that's amazing. If I hit enter, what used to happen in older versions of Report Builder was that automatically clicked the OK button, so it was almost impossible. You could insert extra lines by, I think, holding down the Alt key and pressing enter, but if you just hit enter, that was like hitting the OK button. So that's at least one problem they've solved with this new version. Sadly, they don't appear to have allowed you to tab in text. If I hit the tab key on the keyboard to attempt to indent that text, it just tabs to the next available option in the dialog box. So I can hit tab several times to cycle through the various options, but it doesn't let me tab in a bit of text. So that's a bit annoying. So you can tell probably from my tone of voice that I don't particularly enjoy using the expression builder in Report Builder. It's not as fully featured as the one in Visual Studio, so this is, for me, this is almost a deal breaker for Report Builder. At least you're aware of the few limitations here. The end result will be exactly the same. The expression will work quite happily if I click OK and then OK. I can drag the success column back into the table, and then the result of that when I actually finally run the report will be exactly the same. So just be aware of those slight limitations of the expression builder in Report Builder. Okay, so now that we've designed our basic report, we should really have a look at what it looks like when it's running. Now, I appreciate we haven't spent much time making it look absolutely beautiful. I haven't even bothered changing the width of this text box to make sure it fits the width of the table. I haven't made sure the table is lined up with the edges of the text box either, so I just shift a couple of little things around. There are lots and lots of other techniques you could use here to make this look a lot better. I don't really care about that at this particular point. Just to check what it looks like when it does indeed run. In Report Builder, head to the Home tab in the ribbon and click the Run button, or you could just press the F5 key on the keyboard, and that will take the report into the Preview view. So that kind of simulates what it will look like when it's been deployed to the report server, so that you can then, your end users can browse through the list of different results and then either print it or save it to a different format. There's a bunch of different buttons you can click on here to affect that. So you can browse between different pages, you can print it, you can export it to a variety of different formats. This toolbar doesn't look exactly like this when you've deployed the reports to the report server. When you view it via the report portal, there's a slightly different toolbar, although the options available are the same. So, to get back to the design view, should I decide that I don't particularly like the fact I've got some slightly narrow columns so I can't display the film names on a single row, I could head back to the design view and then make some changes to the report design, and so on and so on. I don't want to spend too much time doing this because this isn't really the point of this video. What I can then do is just run the report again, either by clicking Run or pressing F5, and then seeing if it's made any improvements. So that's how to do it in Report Builder. You just switch between the Run and Design view by clicking that button on the Home tab in the ribbon. Doing the same thing in reporting services or report server projects in Visual Studio is pretty much the same, except there's no separate Run button. What you've got instead is a Design tab and a Preview tab. So again, just making a couple of subtle little tweaks to make sure it looks reasonably sensible first. If I hit the Preview tab at the top of the Report Design view, that will switch into the preview and will load all the data. The toolbar is ever so slightly different, so you'll see slightly smaller buttons, but the same available options. You can page between different pages, you can print it, you can export it to various different formats, etc. So neither of these reflect exactly what the report will look like when it's been deployed, but it's close enough a simulation that you'll get the idea about what you'll be able to do to it. Switching back to design view means I can then make changes and I can preview again and design view, etc., etc. So the same sort of idea for Report Builder and report server projects. We haven't talked about saving reports yet, and This works slightly differently between the two different products. For report server projects in Visual Studio, as soon as you choose to preview a report, as I've just done, the report itself gets saved. And you can tell that if I just choose to make another design change to this report, you'll see that as soon as I make a design change, the little tab at the top of the report design gets a little asterisk symbol, indicating that I've made a change that hasn't yet been saved. Now I can save that manually just by clicking the Save button or pressing Ctrl and S, and you'll see the little asterisk disappears. I can also make changes if I just take that table back and then change the width again of the report. You can see the asterisk has reappeared, but if I click the Preview tab, you'll see that the asterisk disappears, so the report has to be saved before it can be previewed. Now that's slightly different in Report Builder. I haven't actually saved the report in Report Builder yet. The report in Visual Studio, the one in the report server project, will sit within the folder you created when you first chose to create the project. So if I just switch back to my desktop, which is where I created my movies project in the first place, I've just held down the Windows key and pressed D there just to do that quickly. If I double click into the movies folder there, and then double click into the movies folder again, I'll do that properly, the movies folder, then I'll find that the two reports I've created so far have both been saved inside that folder. They're both safe and sound. Now the report builder file hasn't been saved yet at all. It's still called untitled and hasn't been saved anywhere. So what I'm going to do now is choose to save this, and you can save this in a couple of ways. You can press Ctrl and S, or click the Save button, or head to the File menu and choose Save or Save As. So if I just hit any of those options, I'll get a fairly standard sort of file browser dialog box. So if I just point to my desktop, and I'll call this something like Simple Movie Report. Okay, and if I hit the Save button or hit Enter, that will save the file, and if I browse back to my desktop by holding Windows and pressing D, there's my Simple Movie Report sitting on the desktop. Closing and reopening files, I know this is a little bit patronising, but it does work a little differently in the two different products, so it's worthwhile just very quickly mentioning. If I head back to Visual Studio first of all, I'm just going to close the report itself first with the tab, or the cross at the top of the report tab. Then I'm going to close down the entire Visual Studio application at that point. And then if I head back to Report Builder, I'm going to close down the entire Report Builder file application as well. So if I wanted to reopen a file in Report Builder, I can head back to the Start menu and reopen Report Builder, of course. The little Getting Started dialog box that will pop up allows me to either open an existing file or go to look at recently saved or used files. If I choose to open a file, again it's my fairly standard file browser dialog box. So I could go back to the desktop and I could open up my Simple Movie Report. Alternatively, I could go to my Movies folder, which is the one that corresponds to my Visual Studio project, and just to prove that I can open up reports created in one application from another, I can just happily open up Report 1 by double-clicking on it, and you'll see that this is the one that I created initially in Visual Studio. There's absolutely no way to tell that that's the case, however, other than that's where I went to open up the file, of course, because all the things I've done in Visual Studio I could have done in Report Builder as well. So let me just close down Report Builder, and I'll try to do the same thing for Visual Studio. If I go back to the Start menu and I open up Visual Studio, what I'll have to do first, I can't open a report up by itself. I'll need to open up the project which the report belongs to. So I can either click on a recently used project in the recent list here, or I could head to the File menu and choose to open or go to Recent Projects and Solutions and open it up from that list, or I could choose to open a project solution and then browse for it on the desktop. So I could go to the Movies folder, then look for the Movies Solution file in there, the SLN extension, and then I can open that one up. I'm sorry this is so tedious and boring, but eventually I'll get back to the point where I've got access to all of the reports in that project. Now, if I wanted to open up the Report Builder report, that's a little more complex as well. I can't just open it directly. I have to first of all import it into the project. So to do that, I could right-click on my Reports folder and I can choose to add an existing item. So if I choose to add an existing item, and then if I browse to my desktop and I choose to import my Simple Movie Report from the desktop, you'll see that that now sits alongside the rest of the reports in the project. I can then just double-click on that file in the Solution Explorer to open it, and when it finally does open, there we go, that's the one that I designed in Report Builder. So you can see it's got that little execution time in the footer section down there. So you can, as I said earlier on at the start of the video, you can open reports created in either application in either of the other applications, so they're completely interchangeable. Let me just close down that report there, and then I'm going to close down Visual Studio again. I'm going to save changes to the project. So this little dialog box asks me to save changes to the project. So the project now contains an extra item that wasn't there before, so if I click yes, that will update the project as well. If I browse into the movies folder and then the movies folder in there, you'll see that I've got a separate copy of the simple movie report. So it's not just opening the file from its original location, it's importing it into the new project, making a copy of the original. So that's one little thing to bear in mind there as well. Okay, so the final big difference between the two products is in how you get the reports you've created deployed to a report server so that other people can view them. So currently these reports are just sitting on my local machine and they're not deployed to a report server. What I would like to do first is show you the application you'll use to view the reports once they've been deployed. So that's the new web portal, or reportal as I've taken to calling it, which you view via a web browser. So I'm going to use Internet Explorer to demonstrate this. If I just head to my Start menu and I'm going to right click on Internet Explorer and I'm going to choose More and then choose to Run as Administrator. The reason I'm doing this is because of the particular way I've got reporting services set up. So I'm opening up I'm browsing to the report portal, the web portal, on the same machine that the report server is installed, and there are some restrictions on exactly what you can do in that kind of situation. I'm doing it this way because that's the way that I've set it up from the SQL Server 2016 training video, sort of training series. So if you followed the SQL Server 2016 Getting Started series and you've installed SQL Server and used the same configuration settings as I have, then you'll have the same sort of issue. So what I'm going to do here is, as I say, right click Internet Explorer, choose More, and then choose Run as Administrator, choose Yes, I'd like to allow that to happen. And I've already actually created a shortcut for me to get to my report web portal. So if I switch to the favorites list, I've got a report manager folder there, and I've got a variety of different report manager applications available from earlier versions of SQL Server. So I'm going to go for the one that's for my SQL 2016 training instance. So if I select that shortcut, and that will take me to the home page of my web portal with nothing installed currently, or nothing deployed so far. Now if you don't know the URL to use for your own particular web portal, then you can find it using an application that will be installed alongside SQL Server if you choose to install the report server component. So again, if you followed this video series exactly as I've created it, then you should find that in your Start menu, either through the list of all programs, or maybe you've created another little shortcut for it, the Reporting Services Configuration Manager application. So if I open that application and click Yes, I can then choose to connect to my SQL 2016 training instance and click Connect. Then the web portal URL is listed right there, so you can find it in that application if you don't have it already. So let me just exit out of that. We've established where our report portal is, or web portal, whatever you like to call it. So clearly we can see at this point there aren't any reports deployed to it. Now to save reports to a report server in either Report Builder or Visual Studio, you need to know another URL, which is the URL of the report server. One way that you can find that out is, again, assuming you've followed the video series for installing SQL Server, as I have listed it in the SQL Server 2016 series, you should have another application installed called SQL Server Management Studio. So again, I'm going to open up SQL Server Management Studio by right-clicking on it and choosing More, and then choosing Run as Administrator. And if I click Yes, I'll eventually be presented with a list of different servers that I can connect to. So when the application does finally launch, there it is. I can choose to connect to a reporting services engine, or a server, or a database engine server. I want to get connected to the reporting services server, and I want to make sure it's the same SQL 2016 training instance. And if I've done that, then I can click Connect. It hopefully won't take too long for that to connect to that particular server. And when it has, what I'd like to be able to do is view the properties of that server so that I can get access to the report server URL. So here we go. If I right click the top node in the list and then choose Properties, what I can then do is just copy and paste the URL to the clipboard by selecting it from that dialog box. So I can just select it and then press Ctrl+C to copy, and then I can cancel that dialog box. I shan't need it anymore. I'll leave the application open just in case I need to get back to it later on. So to make that work, or to allow me to deploy a report in Report Builder, what I'm going to do is go back to the Start menu, and again I'm going to right click the Report Builder application, and I'm going to choose More, and I'm going to choose Run as Administrator, and then click Yes to allow it to make changes to my machine. And when the application has started, I'm going to cancel the Getting Started window. I'm going to open up a previously used file. So if I go back to the File menu, I can choose to open up my simple movie report. So I can do that by clicking that option in the list of recently used files. In order to save this report to a report server, I've first of all got to connect to one. You know, you might be able to see down at the bottom here, I've got a little status bar message that says I'm not currently connected to a report server, but there's a handy little shortcut I can click there to connect. So if I click that connect tool, I can then paste in my report server URL, the one that I've just copied, Control V, then click connect, and that will hopefully fairly quickly connect to my report server. So that's great because that provides me with a load of other options now for where I can save this file. So actually deploying reports in Report Builder is just a case of saving them to a report server location. You need to make sure you've connected to it, of course. So if I head back to the File menu now, and if I choose to choose Save As rather than Save, I'm currently pointing to my desktop folder where I opened the report from. But if I choose this link here that says Recent Sites and Servers, what I should then be able to do is select this report server from the list. So if I double-click that report server, I can then just simply paste or save my file in there by clicking the Save button. So once I've done that, it takes a little bit longer than saving it to your desktop or a folder. What I can then do is switch back to Internet Explorer, and if I just refresh this page, I ought to find that my new report eventually appears. So there's my simple movie report. And if I click on it now, and if anybody who can access this server or this report portal can click on that report, they'll see the list of movies according to the design of the report that we've just uploaded. So it's a fairly long-winded process, appreciated, but it's actually a lot simpler to do in Report Builder. It's simply a case of connecting to the report server and then using that as a location in which to save your files. Now, achieving the same result in Visual Studio is a little bit more complex, but not actually that much. Let's start just by closing down Report Builder. So let me just click the cross top right hand corner, and then I'm going to go back to my Start menu, and I'm going to right click my Visual Studio shortcut and choose More, and then choose Run as Administrator again, and click Yes to allow that to make changes. When the application does finally launch, what we're going to do is load our Movies project again, and then we're going to set the report server URL by modifying a property of the entire project. So let's open up the Movies project by clicking on the Recent Projects link at the left hand side, and that will open up all of the reports I've created so far. To set the report server URL, then there's no handy little connect button that I can click on like in Report Builder. What I have to do instead is right click on the Movies project name and then choose to view its properties. And it should still be copied to the clipboard, but where it says Target Server URL, if I just take away the information that's already there and then just paste in the URL that I copied earlier on, I can then click OK, and that's the report server set. What I now need to do is deploy the project. So I can do this in a couple of ways actually. I can either deploy the entire project or I can deploy individual reports. In this case, one of the advantages of report server projects in Visual Studio is you can deploy everything all in one go, rather than in Report Builder saving files one by one. This is also quite important if you're using shared data sources or shared data sets, because it's at this point that those items will be deployed as well. And Report 2, although it doesn't actually do anything of course, but Report 2 relies on the movie's shared data source, if you remember from way back earlier on in the video. So let's right click on the report project name again, Movies, and then just choose Deploy. And we should see a little output window popping up, and it should tell me that it's deploying all the different items, not too many to deploy, and hopefully that succeeds. So once again, back to Internet Explorer, and if I browse back to the home page here, and if I just refresh the home page again, what I ought to end up with this time, as well as my basic simple movie report from my Report Builder application, I've also got now a Movies project which contains all the reports from my Visual Studio project, but also a data sources folder. So if I click my data sources folder, that's where the shared movies data source is stored. If I just go back to the home page and then browse through to my Movies folder, I'll see that I've got report 1, 2 and the simple movie report that I imported there as well. So if I view report 1, that will show me the list of films again. I could view report 2, although there's not much point. As I say, I didn't actually add any items to it, so it's just a blank report, but hey, there you go. Now, one of the nice things about having deployed this report project is that I can download files from it as well. So one of the nice things about having deployed any reports, in fact, whether Report Builder or Report Server projects, is you can download those report definitions. So if I wanted to, I could click on the little ellipsis icon at the top right hand corner here and choose to download the file. If I then just choose to save this to my desktop, I guess, just quickly, I'll stick it on my desktop and then click Save. I can then open up that file in either Visual Studio or Report Builder to make changes to it. So if I open up Report Builder, I could then open up an existing file pointing to my desktop and open up report 1, and then I can make changes to that and then save it back again to the report server. So once they've been uploaded, you don't actually need the original files at all. You can just download the uploaded copies, make changes to those, and then re-upload them again when you need to. One other neat thing now about having deployed a shared data source is that Report Builder can finally make use of those. So just very quickly to demonstrate that, if I go back to my Start menu, I'm going to right-click Report Builder, choose More, and then choose Run as Administrator again, and click Yes. What I can then do is, once the application is loaded, I'm going to create a new report, so I'll just close down the Getting Started window. If I make sure that I've connected to my report server, I should find that it's in the drop-down list because I've used it recently, so I can just select the URL from the drop-down list this time rather than copy-pasting it again. Click Connect. I'm going to create a new data source for the report, so I can right-click there and choose Add Data Source. And then this time I'm going to use a shared data source, so I can hit the Browse button down here, and then I can point to, it's already pointing to the report server that I've connected to, so I can just browse into the data sources folder, choose Movies Shared, and then that's available now to this project, to this single report. But every report that I create now from now on in Report Builder can also access that shared data source, so I can create data sets based on it using this fairly poor version of the query designer, but everything from this point is exactly the same. Okay, so there you have it, our basic comparison of Report Builder and Visual Studio Report Server projects. I'm hoping that the main thing you've gotten from this is that the end result, whether you choose to use Report Builder or Visual Studio, the end result is exactly the same. You can deploy your reports to a report server and then other people can view them. It's just that the route you take to get there is subtly different in certain parts depending on which product you choose to use. It really is very much a case of personal preference. I find all the bits of software there you can get completely for free, so you don't need to spend any money for a particularly sophisticated bit of software. You can use both products to create exactly the same sorts of reports as we've seen. Subtle differences in the exact way you go about doing it, but basically pick the one that's right for you. If you like what you've seen here, why not head over to the WiseOwl website, where you can find loads more free resources, including these videos, some written blogs and tutorials, and even some exercises that you can download to practice your skills. Thanks for watching, see you next time.